ready to roll.
Maulana Usman is from Leeton. He's going to say a few words as well, inshallah. I'm really pleased that he's here. And he's also been in my Aqsa team. We've done lots of courses together, mashallah. A very learned and very knowledgeable person. So he's going to say a few words, inshallah.
As-Salamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Are we ready to make a start, or do you still want a couple of minutes to get your hot drinks down? Are we ready to start, brothers and sisters? Okay. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina astafa amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wa ma ubarri'u nafsi inna an-nafsa la'ammaratun bis-su'i illa ma rahima rabbi. Inna rabbi ghafurur rahim. We've heard Brother Kaushar talk about nafse ammara, nafse lawama and nafse mutma'inna, and I'm sure that you've heard of these terms when we're talking about the soul. What I want to do is add a bit of context, because I feel that the topic that we are trying to grapple with, we see it as something mystical, something elusive, something really difficult to quantify and put into words. We can talk about physical ailments. If I were to say I've been diagnosed with cancer and I'm going through a dose of chemotherapy and my hair is falling out, what sort of response would I get? I'd get a response maybe of sympathy, a bit of empathy if someone else has been through a similar experience or knows of someone that's gone through a similar experience. If I were to say I've had a heart attack, what would be the response from you, from the brothers and the sisters? Similar? Brothers and sisters, please do speak up, because I want to make sure that we're all awake and we're all kind of interacting and engaging, because it's an area that is not dry at all. It is not dry at all. And I want to remind myself and all of us that what we're talking about today are integral parts of our DNA, of our makeup as a human being and as a Muslim. And we need to treat it with the same seriousness that we treat other things that we see as being more relevant. So I would appreciate some response, otherwise I'll fall asleep myself and you'll have to call an ambulance or something because you think he's had a heart attack. But it's not a heart attack, maybe it's boredom. I don't know. But if I were to say that, that I'm suffering from a heart attack, or I've suffered from a heart attack or cancer, what sort of response would I get from you?
Probably similar on both fronts, sympathy, empathy, and also people maybe wanting to see if they can help you in any kind of way. If someone's got a heart attack, they say, "Oh, is there anything I can do for you?" So I think on both fronts would probably be the same kind of response.
Okay.
People would rally around and help.
Okay. Would any of you panic if I said what I said? You feel worried?
Worried, yeah. If you panic, more worried.
Okay. You have your phone in your hand, what would you do? That I'm having one, or I've just had one.
Call ambulance.
You call ambulance. Yeah. Right, okay. What else?
Maybe call some relatives or something, or someone who that person.
Okay.
First aid help, yes.
Sorry?
First aid help is equal.
Okay.
Trying to make a big dua for you as well.
Make dua for me as well. That's what I was kind of trying to fish for. Because the verse, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي إِنَّ رَبِّي غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, is from Surah Yusuf. And those of us that are familiar with the different phases of Surah Yusuf and the different trials and tribulation that Yusuf As-Salaam goes through, from childhood to being thrown in the well by his brothers, to being drawn out by passers going by, to being sold in the market as a slave. Just imagine a prophet to be being sold as a slave. Just imagine a child that's been kind of torn away from his parents, ending up in a strange land and being sold. And then in adulthood, when he's young, Allah gives him the physical beauty that we all crave for. And he's got that in abundance. You know, the aesthetics are there like no one else. Right? And then the trials of the attempt by Zulaykha to entice him. And it's at that stage when he's not dithering, he's steadfast on his ground, he's holding on to his ground. But he says, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ, that I'm not making out that I'm something special. Because the nature of the soul, its gut reaction is to take us away from the right path. إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ, that verily the nafs usually encourages us to something that is evil. إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي, except that person on whom Allah showers His mercy, His rahmah. إِنَّ رَبِّي غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, verily Allah is Ghafoor, forgiving and compassionate. When we look at the ayah of Nafs al-Lawwama, that's in Surah Qiyamah, لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes qasam, He swears by the token of something significant, like when He says, Wal Asr, Allah swears by the token of time, because time is something really, really crucial. It's a blessing, it's a ni'mah that can never ever be regained. It is a passing ni'mah. But it's so significant, Allah makes qasam, He swears by the token of time when He says, Wal Asr, innal insana lafi khusr, verily humanity is at a loss. So when Allah takes qasam on something, it means that this is something really, really significant. So when Allah is saying, La uqsimu bi yawm al-qiyamah, Allah is taking qasam on the day of judgment. It's a huge, it's an event like no other. وَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالنَّفْسِ اللَّوَّامَةِ, and at the same time Allah is taking qasam on that soul that is forever nagging you. Lawwam means something that nags you, something that holds you to account. So that's nafs al-lawwama. And then we talk about nafs al-mutma'inna, which is at the end of that cycle. Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya, fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. There Allah is talking about that nafs, which is at it's full of contentment. It is at ease with itself. It is confident. Allah says, Irji'i, return to your Lord. I.e., the journey that the soul started, right? On its return phase, Allah is saying, Irji'i ila rabbik, return to your Lord. And when you return something from the sender. You know, you return your parcel to whoever sent it. You reply to someone that sent you something. So in essence, the nafs that we want all of us to achieve for ourselves is a nafs, a soul, a state of mindfulness, a sense of taqwa, awareness, where we are at ease with ourselves. Allah is saying, Irji'i ila rabbik, return to your Lord. Radiyatan mardiyya, in a state where you yourself are happy and Allah is happy with you as well. So it's not just one-sided, it's mutual appreciation. Fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati, enter into my servants and through them enter into my Jannah. So that's the eternal goal where the soul came from, and it is return of that journey. So I want you to think about the wider context of nafs lawama, nafs ammara and nafs mutma'inna when we are talking about what we are talking about, the topic today of anxiety, of depression, of feeling a sense of worthlessness, a sense where we are anxious about ourselves and anxious about those that we care for. And I think we need to grab this topic just in the same way that we talk about Hajj, Zakat, Salah, and other forms of ibadah, because at the end of the day, we are made up of body, mind, and spirit. We are not just a physical entity, we are a spiritual entity as well. And the physical is something that is temporary. The eternal aspect of our makeup is more spiritual, because we were in a spirit form. We entered a physical state, like we've gone into a car or an aeroplane, as a mode of transport for our soul's journey. And then it is our soul, which is eternal, that will end up with Allah's grace into Jannatul Firdaus. So in that sense, the soul and the spiritual side of us is far more significant than the physical side. Has water reached the elbow when we're making our wuzu? Right? That debate, as important as it is to determine whether wudu is complete or not, or is the nail varnish or the flour, the dough that's still on our nails, has it been taken off properly to make sure that wudu is complete? It's an important topic of discussion from a fiqh, from a jurisprudence point of view, because that is to do with the physical side of things, in order to ensure that our spiritual task of salah is valid or not. But at the end of the day, the spirit is far more important than the physic. And I think we've kind of forgotten that aspect of our being. And we've become focused on something that we can touch, something we can smell, something that we can see. And we think this is all it is about, nothing beyond that. So we need to take a step back and look at it in a more wider sense. So if I were to say, going back to my original questions about I've had a heart attack, or I've got diabetes, or I've got cancer, that if I were to say that I'm suffering from mental health challenges, what would be your reaction?
I think most people find with physical illness, because they can see it,
Mm.
they can say, right, I understand that you've got broken your arm, I can see a bandage, I can see that you can have some medication, and I can physically see you can get some help, so everybody knows about that. I think when people say they've got a mental health problem, it frightens other people. They don't think that they can solve it, and they think there's a stigma attached to it, and they might have a negative perception about that person. And I think the other thing amongst the Asian community, everything's jadoo, isn't it?
Sorry, can you speak?
Everything's about black magic. It's not looking at it as being something that is created by the situation you might find yourself in. It's almost like it's something else that's caused it, rather than looking at the person and saying, actually, if you were suffering from postnatal depression, for example, or that's not to do with anything else other than the fact that somebody's jealous about your baby being born. So they would look at it like that, rather than looking at it in terms of mental health could be something to do with the situation that you find yourself in. You might be overwhelmed, and they wouldn't think necessarily to talk about it. They'd be worried about the stigma. They'd be worried about seeing a doctor. They'd be worried about, they wouldn't know what to do.
Okay, Jazakallah for that. When we look at the Quran, Allah talks about Inna sam'a wal basara wal fu'ad kullu ulaika kana anhu masula. Allah is talking about sam'a, our sense of being able to hear, wal basar, our eyesight, wal fu'ad, our heart or our mind. Kullu ulaika kana anhu masula, that will be answerable on each of those things. What we've heard, what we've seen, and what we've thought of or internalized. And the Quran is kind of, it's not just one isolated ayah in the Quran. Time and again, Allah talks about the mental and the spiritual aspect of our makeup. And when He says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that we have created man and jinn for no other purpose than His worship. The worship is physical in some respects, but in most other respects, like Brother Kaushar has said, that if we were to analyze the words from the Quran, about 5% of those words, those verses, are to do with our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, huququllah. And 95% of the words in the Quran and in the Sunnah actually are about ethics, about how we deal with one another. The rights of the neighbor, the rights of the siblings, the rights of the spouses, the rights of the parents, the rights of the children, the rights for the environment, for the animal kingdom. Right? The bulk of the Quranic and the Sunnah text is about hukukul ibad. It's about ethics, and these are not things that are tangible. The ethical side of it is not tangible. Whereas with your ibadat, you're giving of the 2.5% of zakah, you're standing before Allah in ruku, sujood, in qiyam, your fasting, your hajj, these are tangible things. Yet I think we've got the balance wrong. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullah, O you who believe, be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because taqwa is a sense of mindfulness. And now, after going the full circle, modern society has kind of coined this term of being mindful. And mindfulness is nothing other than taqwa, which is a sense of being conscious at all times of our duties towards ourselves and one another. So let's talk about this, and let's discuss, and let's ask questions, and let's learn from one another on this topic, which may seem dry, but when you kind of take the cobwebs away, it is quite a fascinating aspect of our being. But I just wanted to not dwell too much or take too much of the time. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a famous hadith has said, لِكُلِّ دَاءٍ دَوَاءٍ, that for every illness there is a cure. For every illness there is a cure. And we need to take mental health and the challenges of mental health like any other illness that has a physical aspect, which we can relate to. And just like with the physical illness, we share empathy and we show sympathy, we need to deal with the spiritual illnesses that we all have to some degree. That we need to deal with it with empathy, with sympathy, with seriousness, and with sincerity. Yes, people will run away because they think, like people run away with the COVID patients, that it's contagious, right? We can't see, how contagious or how not contagious it is, but we rely on the specialists when they say, look, you've got to isolate, you've got to practice social distancing, you've got to wear the mask. And we take that without much questioning. Why? Because we want to preserve the physical side of things. So preservation of life and preservation of health is strongly stressed in Islam. But over and above this, preservation of Iman has a greater priority than the preservation of the physical side of the body. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to do justice to this topic and to bring ease and itminan, tamaninat qalb in our troubled times. Jazakumullah for listening. And if there are any questions, let's discuss them and come to something that is shared by everyone. Jazakumullah. As-Salaam alaikum.
Jazakallah khair, mashallah, words of wisdom, mashallah. Jazakallah khair for your input. Okay, brothers and sisters, so I promised you that I'll be talking about how to be in a positive state of mind, and then I was going to talk about how to boost your Iman when it goes low. Are we still on that track? Are we still okay with that? And finishing time, so at least I know, do you want to finish at 4:30 or 5 o'clock? So I can adjust my program. Do you want to finish at 5 o'clock? Put your hand up. Quite a few brothers. Sisters, at 5 o'clock? 4:30? Okay, 3 people 4:30. Are the rest 5? 5, okay. 5, 3, okay. Because there was another exercise I wanted to give you to help us to do a bit more interaction, because there has not been a lot of interaction on this occasion. But to test your hukukul ibad, I wanted to give you this 5 questions, which I'm going to use tomorrow on my marriage course, about their emotional intelligence with their spouse. So something for the husband and something for the wife. But in this respect, it could be your brother, your sister, if you're not married, for example. If you are married, then use this context. If you are not married, then imagine it's for your brother or your sister or your neighbor, or whoever it may be. So I'm going to give you just 10 minutes, quickly go through these 5 questions, and in one big group of the brothers, and one big group with the sisters. So if sister can take this and just read out the question to the sisters and then discuss what the questions are and how will you answer them. And then we'll do a quick feedback. I'll just give you 10 minutes, inshallah, and then I'll carry on with my slides. Yeah, still one group is better. Is that okay? So we're just doing a group work now, inshallah. And then in 10 minutes time we'll come back.